socialist doesn't understand simple economics. I mean, this is like true by definition.
Sorry, I assumed your gender.
Yeah,
assumed,
now you're good,
yeah,
bro.
yeah.
I was just agreeing with you said socialism is non-American, so what do you think is pro-American?
Well, let's define what socialism is, right? Socialism is the government confiscation of private property. It tends to be the rule of the few, not the many, even though they profess to say it's the rule of the many. But the American, let's just say, economic tradition is private property rights, markets with proper restraint, entrepreneurship, the ability to flourish, trade, create new products. Socialism disincentivizes almost all those things. Socialism is built largely on envy and greed. And hilariously, the people that push for socialism, the rank and file, they don't realize that socialism actually just creates an oligarchy. It doesn't actually create a strong middle class, what they allege, to want.
So do you believe in taxes?
Ideally 10% across the board. Yeah.
Okay, so you believe in the confiscation of people's private property?
At some point it depends on if it.
That's actually a good point. But I mean, I'm with Charlie Kirk so far on most of what he's saying. Socialism bad, private property good, capitalism good. I do not support taxes of any sort. Taxation is theft. The state is a criminal organization.
If it's private property income or if it's necessary to fund government services.
But that's still a confiscation with a gun through police if you don't pay.
At around 10% to fund public services,
but you just
the military.
Find socialism as taking private
Well, hold
property.
on. The average tax rate in a socialist type environment, and even this country, is what, 55%?
Yeah, but I'm saying taxes in general. That's private property.
So
being taken
taxation
from
is
people who
theft.
earn that money.
I fully acknowledge a moderate form of something I hate in order to fund a government, police, firefighters, EMT as necessary.
But that's still government confiscating
of course
private property,
yes.
which you said was socialism.
Yes, but
Okay, but this questioner is gonna move on. I mean, you can't just keep hammering away at the same point,
you vote for it.
valid though it may be.
You agree with it. I mean, I'm not an anarchist.
Why do I
never
agree?
have been.
Well, I'm an anarchist. I say any form of government
Okay,
existence is
that's
socialism.
fine. Have you ever called the cops?
No, I don't believe.
Okay,
I don't
you ever
like
gone to
cops.
a
They don't like me.
Okay, you ever gone to hospital?
No.
Okay, well, one day when you go to a hospital or you use the social service you
I'm
paid
saying
for.
you define socialism as a confiscation of private property, and you're saying that you
Well,
believe
let
in
me go
taxes, which is a confiscation
Okay,
of
let me go
private
further.
wages.
Let me go for the unreasonable confiscation of private property, the elimination of private property altogether. You can have a 10%
that's
tax
communism.
rate.
I mean, you can have police supplied by the market. You can have hospitals. Hospitals are in the United States supplied by the market, by and large. Well, there's a large amount of government. So I don't think that argument's very compelling.
That's not socialism.
Well, they could be conflated. One is a gateway drug to the other. I mean,
Okay, but the middle ground
Lenin said
is
that socialism is a precursor to communism.
Okay, but
so.
they're still different. If it's a gateway
They're-
drug,
They're
meth
both
is not
both
weed.
garden varieties of Marxism. Would you agree? They're
Yeah,
both,
I agree
okay,
with that.
all
But
right.
I'm saying
I think the distinction between socialism and communism is mostly artificial. That is, the terms were interchangeable, and then communism revealed itself to be such a horrible ideology. So people started advocating for socialism, which is really just communism, but they call it a different word, so they can say it's something different, even though the goals are the same and the methods are the same.
weed is not meth, so let's talk about weed. That's still a confiscation. If you're saying it's a confiscation
No,
of
one is better, one is worse, and
Okay,
one is
yeah, but if we're talking about socialism,
more lethal.
you defined it at the beginning as the confiscation of private property.
Yes, correct.
It's also collectivized use. Do you believe in public schools?
No, I mean, ideally, I think they should be more community-based and more volunteerism.
Okay, but
to
you
be
believe in
honest,
them in some level, right?
Well, I mean, again, this is overly abstract and academic. We live in a society where we have government schools, we have public schools, so we could talk about what we want
I know,
or
but,
what is
but
actually.
if we're talking about what is anti-American, what is pro-American, in the existence of what you say is American, would you say public schools are part of being American? Would you say that's
Well, no,
part of
they are.
America's
I mean,
identity?
the public school
Identity?
system was started by John Dewey 100 years ago. We
I mean,
survived without it for
like
quite a while.
what was it? During the signing of the Constitution, which the Federalists strongly supported. They were part of federalism was having a strong.
This guy doesn't seem like a socialist at all. I think he's a libertarian. That's my impression.
Strong central
Yes,
government.
but
I would
the
say it sounds like
Federalists
socialism to me.
today would be like libertarians.
Okay,
just so
but
we're
that's
clear.
still
But
that's still a
they
strong
wanted a
central
small
government.
but strong
But
federal
strong
government.
central government still sounds like socialism to me.
Hold-
And that's
see, this is very sloppy intellectual thinking. That just because we want a police force, a border patrol, and we want clean streets, all of a sudden we become a socialist.
But those are still social
There is a
services.
spectrum between small and strong government and like Soviet-style communism.
but we're not talking about that. We're talking about socialism.
Right.
And
so
as
not,
you define
not,
socialism,
not
it's a
every
confiscation
form of
private
government is
property.
socialism. Would you acknowledge that?
No, I don't.
Okay, then.
But you
that's-
define at the
that's
beginning of this.
intellectually lazy.
No, you defined at the beginning
No,
of this as
I-
social. You
and I've-
offered a definition.
I've
that
offered
socialism
more
was the
nuance to that.
confiscation
I will
of private
say
property.
it is the unreasonable confiscation of.
But what? How do
of
we
wealth.
define reason? What is unreasonable?
That's up to the politics to do. I'd say anything above 10%.
Well, how do you define? So
I
above
said 10%.
10%.
Where I get it from the Bible. Makes sense. 10%
Okay.
of 10% of what you earn, 10% of what you have goes to either to tithe or to God or to some sort of taxation system.
So just in that, so just based
Again,
on
that's
the
my
Bible,
position. We can
your
disagree
position,
on that.
Okay, so your
But-
position is based only at 10%. At 11%, it's not socialism. It is socialism.
No, I'm not saying it's socialism. It gets close. It gets further away from
Then
what it
what-
is.
I think actually they're onto something here that any government really is socialism. I prefer an alternative definition, which is socialism is the state ownership of the means of production. And what is government but state ownership of the means of production? If the state supplies roads, collects taxes to pay for roads, then that is state monopolization of the infrastructure industry. The bulldozers and vehicles that construct the roads, that's the means of production for one particular industry. Likewise, if the state monopolizes public education, that's state ownership of the means of production for the education service. So how do you distinguish between government and socialism? Isn't all government socialism? And to the degree that you have, I mean, isn't communism, isn't socialism just 100% government ownership? And so, to the degree that you have more government ownership, more government control, you are more socialist. To the degree that you have less government ownership, less government control, you are less socialist. Isn't it proper to think of government roads as or infrastructure as socialized infrastructure? Isn't public education socialized education? I mean, what communists want is for total government control over all industries. So certainly they'd want government control over one specific industry, either as a stepping stone or as a compromise.
But where's
I
the
mean,
line? What is socialism?
What is the taxation line? How about
Yeah,
this?
if you're
Socialism is you cannot own the property that you desire.
But you're
And
talking
we're
about me
getting-
being intellectually
how about
lazy.
this?
I'm saying let's have a
So
stringent
let me
definition
actually
of
give you a
what is
real example.
socialism.
California is more socialist. Texas is less socialist. That's a
Okay.
spectrum.
But I want
Would
to
you
know
agree with
when
that?
does socialism begin and when does it end? And I'm saying you're
It-
saying
it's-
that
it's-
some level
it's
of
not like
socialism
an entrance
is, but no, but
into
if you're saying
Narnia.
if you're
It's like
saying
I'm all of a sudden
socialism is
here.
anti-American, I'm saying
It's a
socialism
spectrum.
is a part of America.
Okay, so you
even
want to
if-
know when socialism begins and
Yeah.
when it ends?
Yeah.
When you leave the free state of Florida and
Okay,
you
but
enter the unfree state of New
what's
York,
the tax rate in Florida then?
zero.
No,
The income tax in Florida is zero.
You still have to pay taxes though.
Federal
You
taxes.
still have to pay federal
no
taxes.
no corporate
But if
income
it-
tax, no
but-
personal income tax.
But you still have to pay federal taxes. So if you have to pay taxes at all, it sounds like Florida's a socialist state.
So are you trying to say America's currently socialist?
Yes, that's
Okay,
what I'm saying.
I would agree. We're going more in that direction. So,
Okay, but then you were saying that
socialism
it's not. You're
goes
saying Florida's not
socialism
socialist,
is
and now you're
beyond
saying-
taxes, though.
But wait, you just said that America is socialist, but you said Florida's not socialist. So Florida's part
Well,
of America. That doesn't make sense.
Hold
to
on,
me.
but you pay 20% more taxes here in California than you do in Florida. Yes?
Okay, but they're both socialist.
No, but the federal project right now is more socialist than it is free market. Yes.
Okay, yes.
But in Florida, you get at least some gasp of liberty and freedom that you do not have. In California, if you're a top income earner, you're not paying 15% in addition to a 38% federal income tax rate. That's 53%. That is the government owns a majority of your labor.
Yeah.
So to be even more clear,
Well, that's probably the top marginal tax rate.
the closer you get towards the government,
So, unless you're making a lot of money, you're probably your total income tax burden is probably less than 50%. Though it's still way too high.
owning a majority of your labor and your goods, the further and further closer you get to socialism. California is that.
Yeah.
Now, I would love for the federal government to get rid of FICA tax, to get rid of, the excess income tax. I've been clear. I think 10% across the board, fine. We need a military. You might not agree. We need a police force. We need a border patrol. We need basic social services that are a safety net, not a hammock. But I do not believe in this over-the-top type taxation. If you want to talk about other types of taxation that everyone here is paying, it's inflation.
But
when you borrow $2 trillion a year, you do not have, you're getting 10% poorer every single year. I'm going to get to the next question because you keep on saying the same thing over and over again. But
I'm just
final
saying,
point.
I don't understand how you can say that socialism is anti-American when even the most pro-American, I think, as you would define, like, would you say Florida's pretty pro-American?
Yeah, I mean, they have no income tax.
But the thing is, if they still have taxation,
no, they have.
If
they're part of the federal government.
Taxation is part of America, and it always has been.
But no, it hasn't.
Has always been part of America.
So since you're such a wise guy,
Yeah, so overall, I don't know, kind of an annoying debate. The libertarian guy or whatever, like, he doesn't have a real point. He just keeps reiterating the same statement. Kirk made a lot of great points. Inflation, low taxes. Obviously, I disagree with him. I prefer no taxes. But at least he had the more interesting side of the discussion.